and welcome back to number 4 in our series for Introduction to Pilates videos. Today we are going to start with a little warm-up, so using some of the exercises and the techniques that we've learned in the first 3 videos. So if you haven't had a chance to watch them, do have a little look before you come to this one. It's going to make a lot more sense when you come into this space now. And if you have seen them, you'll start to recognise some of those points that we've talked about. 5 basic principles, the different starting positions. It's going to start to come into play now. Today we're also going to look at a few other different positions that we use, for example a C curve or a diagonal leg line, and another of the starting positions, side lying. And we're going to talk about a few of the ways that we can modify exercises to help different clients. So you yourself might have slightly different needs to somebody else, to your friend that you're doing the Pilates with, or a different family member. Everyone's body is slightly different, so that's why we offer different modifications, and that is something that I would help you with in the class. But for today we're going to start with a warm-up altogether, so it can be absolutely fresh for this one today. We're going to come into a seated position once again. We're going to place the hands onto the shins, and we're going to try and stack our spine into its neutral alignment. Now, we've talked about neutral before. That's the closest to our S-shaped curve that we can be in our alignment. So we're stacking shoulders over our hips, over our sit bones, and we don't want to try and over straighten the spine. It's a nice easy neutral, but we have that gentle sense of lift through the top of the head, sinking down the sit bones underneath. And we take a breath in here. And we now know we breathe wide into the sides and back of our ribs, inhaling through the nose, and we exhale through the mouth to take ourselves gently into a curved position. So we're rounding over the legs here, not trying to sink down, but lifting the belly gently away from the thighs. And we can take 3 breaths here. Always letting the air flow in that same way, breathing in through the nose, opening the backs of the lungs, sending the air down like you're blowing out through a straw. At the end of 3 breaths, we can start to restack again through the spine, gently coming back up to sitting. We're going to take that one more time, breathing in. So the feet are just sinking down in line with the sit bones, and the space between the sit bones themselves, that little pelvic floor muscle, we're thinking of gently lifting that slightly. It comes as a little sort of doming effect, and that's a slight engagement. Nice and low level, so we can still move around from here. We're not rigid, we're not fixed in space. And as we exhale, we're going to use the exhale to wrap that muscle around the waist, that TVA muscle, that big belt of muscle that wraps around in towards the belly button, bringing us back to our neutral spine. And now let's refine that neutral spine in a supine position. So coming down into your mat, resting the arms by the side. So we've still got feet in line with the sit bones, knees looking up to the sky, arms just resting by the sides of you. They can be palms up, in or down. And we've got heavy shoulders, nice wide collarbones lengthening into the floor. We re-establish. Inhale and exhale. Feeling the ribcage gently float up and out. To help us with our extension exercises, we looked at, for example, the breaststroke prep, and the exhale to aid our flexion, such as our ab prep. Belt of muscle wrapping around the waist, gentle lift through the pelvic floor. We can also bring our pelvis into its neutral alignment, thinking of our pubic bone and our hip bones being in the same horizontal plane like a seesaw in balance. As long as there is no tension through the lower back, you are good to go into your your hip release. But if you want to, you could move it into a light imprint if that was more attainable, sustainable for now. So we're going to open one knee as we inhale and slide the foot away from us. And we're going to exhale as we roll that knee inwards and draw the foot back. So straight away we have a multi-planal exercise. We are opening the knee out to the side and rolling the foot away from us and sliding it back in with some more rotation. So we have external rotation and internal rotation of the leg. At the same time, we're reaching the foot away from us and drawing it back. Let's take it the other way. Let's roll the knee inwards as we inhale and send the leg away, outwards as we exhale and come back. And what we're trying to do here is to maintain our wide, flat pelvis without letting it roll from side to side with the leg. So it's all nice and stable in the center, not rigid, but just stable and held there. Let's switch to the other side. Inhale as we open the knee. Slide the foot away. Exhale as you rotate inwards to draw it back. If you are anything like myself, you might have slightly clicky hips. Don't worry, I've done this one already this morning. This is why it's not clicking now. But you might be a little bit clicky. Don't worry too much about it, as long as it is not a painful movement. And then we are going to take that leg back the other way, rotating inwards, sliding away, trying to keep the foot in contact with the floor as best you can, so not gripping through the hip flexor to send that leg away. One last circle this way. And then we're going to draw the feet back in, replace them in line with the sit bones. We're going to look again at our imprinted spine. And again, if this is not familiar, if it's not sounding familiar at all to you, go and have a look back at exercises in the first 3 videos, and we talk about imprint and neutral and the different movements through the body. But our imprinted spine, we can place our thumbs onto our bottom ribs. We can place our fingertips onto our hip bones. And we can think of that space between them as gently closing together as we exhale. It's a very small contraction. You can see it's barely moved really. My lower back has dropped a little bit towards the floor, but it doesn't have to press down. And then we can inhale to come back to where we were. So once again, exhaling, gentle contraction of the muscles between the ribs and hips. And inhale to release. Check that your glute muscles are not doing the work for you. So you can always just place the hands there and make sure that they're not squeezing, tensing to achieve that. We are concentrating on this muscle and these muscles that wrap around and across. One more time. Nice and relaxed through the shoulders and the head. Returning to neutral. What we could do from here is step the feet in. We can see how that imprint gets used, for example, when we start flexing through the spine into a hip roll. So we breathe in to prepare. We exhale to imprint the spine. Now we want to squeeze on the glutes. We add them separately, and we keep exhaling as we gently start rolling the pelvis up, tipping one bone at a time up into our bridge position. We're thinking big toe, little toe, ball and heel of the foot all pressing down into the floor. Inhale to stay. Exhale to roll it gently back down again, melting through the breastbone, trickling down the upper back, middle back, lower back, through that imprint, all the way back to your neutral, and finally the glutes can release. Let's do it again, breathing in. Exhale, imprint, squeeze glutes, rolling through, peeling one bone at a time off the floor, like peeling tape off the ground, and coming into your bridge. Think of that like a ski slope position. We don't want to press up through the upper or lower or middle back. We want to keep that nice lengthened angle from knees all the way down to the back of the shoulder blades. So not pressing up into the neck, yeah? Keep it nice and free. You can hear in my voice, it's really easy here. I say easy, it's easy here. It's tough here. Breathing in to stay. Rolling it down again. We're going to take that one more turn. Just check your knees this time. Make sure that the space between them is the same, whether your pelvis is on the floor or in the air. So we don't want them to collapse together or to flare open. We want to keep that parallel alignment, really feel the glutes and hamstrings assisting that. Wide flat pelvis, roll it down again. All the way back into the floor. Let's step the feet away. We're going to finish this little bit of a warm up with some arm raises. And we have looked at this one before as well. We're thinking about how the shoulder blades move with the arms. So as we know, the shoulder blades form the attachment for the arms. It's very important to warm up the muscles around them. So we're going to breathe in. Raise both arms over the chest, fingertips pointing to the sky. You're back into your neutral spine. And then you're going to reach overhead, exhaling, reaching the fingertips in line with the shoulder socket. Inhale as they come up over the chest again, and exhale to come down. So it looks a little something like this. And you might feel underneath you how your shoulder blades will slide up slightly as the arms reach overhead, and they will slide down again as the arms come back down. Making sure that we're not pulling up through the shoulder blades or squishing. Keep the collarbones nice and wide. and try not to let those arms drop down into the floor or the rib cage to flare open. You've got one more. Exhaling to reach over. This time you're just going to bring the hands back up over the chest, and then we're going to take them behind the head. And we're going to go into our ab prep. Now we did the ab prep before, and we did it in this position with the arms long by the sides, reaching through, and that is an option as well. It brings a little more work to the neck flexors, and if you're not used to using your neck in that way, it can feel a little bit tense in the beginning and it can tire quite quickly. So a modification, an option that I might give you, or your instructor might give you, is to have the hands behind the head. And we want the elbows slightly forwards where we can see them. We don't want to be pinching back through the shoulder blades. So nice and wide across the front and back surface of the rib cage. We breathe in to nod the chin as we did before. Other than that, the rest of our spine is in neutral. As we exhale, we curve up through the top of the spine, head and shoulders trying to peel off the floor. We inhale to stay. We exhale to lengthen back down again to our start position in neutral, and we go again. So we've got a little nod of the chin. Think of lengthening the back of the neck. Wide exhale, curling up. So it's like you're trying to get your shoulder blades off the floor, but you want the back of the rib cage to stay down. Lower ribs still in contact. Calming down, and again. And this brings a little more workload to the abdominals because they're having to carry the weight of the arms as well. Let's just try one or two with the arms along by our sides. Feel the difference now. The abs have to do just a tiny bit less work, but the neck flexors are having to be involved, and that's okay because we're going to use those again in other exercises where we might want to add more movement through the arm, bring more challenge to the upper body, and calming down. Release. Let's come into a breaststroke prep. This is another one that we have looked at before, but I'm going to recap it for you. Bringing yourself into a prone position, laying down on your front. We've got long legs. They can be either together or slightly separated. Make sure they are in parallel. So we don't want to rotate either outwards or inwards. So the glutes and the hamstrings are switched on, just enough to keep the legs in that parallel position. We're going to take the hands to the outside of the shoulders, and we have a neutral spine to start. So not pressing the pubic bone or the hip bones down into the floor. Nice long spine, wrapping that muscle around the waist. Long in the back of the neck as well. We take a breath in to prepare. We exhale to lengthen the upper back forwards and up. So it is an upper back extension. Make sure your tummy button isn't pressing into the floor. Wide breath to stay there. Exhale to lengthen down again. You've got two more to go. So you want the arms in a place where the forearms can be on the floor. So if they're too far back, you're going to get a bit pinchy through the shoulders. And if they're too far forward, your shoulders are going to roll with you. So you want it nice and wide in the collarbones. Let's go for one more. Breathing in. Upper back lengthening. Lower back nice and relaxed. Not crunching into itself. Releasing down. And as always, we follow an extension exercise with a flexion exercise. Press ourselves back into a shell stretch, sitting the heels back over the feet, rounding through the spine and allowing the top of the head to start dropping down towards the mat. So you make this shell shape. Now, if for any reason this is not the one for you, if it's compressing through the ankles, through the knees, and it's just not comfortable, you can also take your shell stretch, laying onto your back instead. So taking a supine position, hugging the legs into the chest. And whatever position you are in for your shell stretch, it's about finding that release for the muscles in the back. So taking the time to send the air nice and wide into the sides and back of the lungs. Exhaling long through the mouth. Feeling those abdominal muscles wrapping around on that exhale. Whichever position you are in, you are going to take one more breath. And then you're going to join me down here in our supine position once again. We're going to go for an exercise called the 100. 100 is a very famous Pilates exercise. It turns up in most of my classes, but I do give people a week off now and then. So the 100 gets its name from the 100 pulses of the arms that we do. But the 100 is also a great example of how many ways you can modify an exercise. And I'm going to kind of run through a few of them now. So don't feel you have to try them all, but just have a little look, see if any of them look appropriate for you. And it's something that in class I'd be able to give you that advice one-to-one and say, this modification is going to be better suited for you for this reason. Try it out. So we have, for example, a tabletop leg option. Now you might be working in a neutral spine for any given reason. You might want to keep the feet on the floor. But if you are with me in a tabletop, it's going to be an imprinted spine. That was that mini contraction between ribs and hips. We are going to float one leg into the tabletop first of all. Make sure you take all the way out of the second leg before it comes up, so there's no jerking or jarring through the body. Old friend tabletop, it's back again. We can add our ab prep onto that. So we still keep the imprint, but we nod through the chin and we flex up in the top of the body. From here we could start pulsing our arms. Breathing in as we pulse 2, 3, 4, 5 and exhale 2, 3, it's nice and swift. Little bouncing basketballs either side of you. Trying to maintain that imprint position. Thinking of wrapping the glutes around underneath. Gently pressing the inside thighs together. Remember, it's your upper body that is creating this flexion through the shoulders and the neck. So if it starts to feel like it's just your neck and it's killing you, yeah, place one hand behind the head. Pulse with one arm for 10 or 20 pulses and then switch it over to the other one. You could always release the head and shoulders back down to the floor as well. Another option, when it's slightly more familiar to you, you're progressing a little further with Pilates, would be to take the legs onto a diagonal. Now that's harder to sustain because it is a much longer lever, yeah? But the same rules apply, wrapping the glutes, squeezing the inside thighs together. Let's go for 20 more pulses in whichever position we feel is best suited for us. Here we go, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5 and exhale 2, 3, you're nearly there. Pause the arms. The way to come down is that we would release the head and shoulders first. Then we would take one foot and the other back to the floor, and then we would release into our neutral spine. Coming out of an exercise is almost as important as the exercise itself. You don't want to have done sort of, 30, 40, 50 seconds worth of really good, tough work and then just let it all flop away and hurt yourself on the way down. It's good to deconstruct nice and carefully, safely, and it means that you just get a tiny little bit more ab work on the way down as well. So that's one example. Another exercise we might do, for example, could be the half rollback. So gently bringing yourself up. Now the half rollback is another exercise with a slightly different spinal alignment. We've talked about neutral, we've talked about imprint. We're also now going to talk about a C curve. C like the letter C. So starting from this place, grounded through the sit bones, lengthening up through the spine. We're going to take that forwards curve that we had in our breathing exercise, where we were breathing right back at the beginning, and we're going to take the hands forward in line with the shoulders. From here, try and squeeze your glutes in order to tip your pelvis back in space. So we are rounding through the spine, and now it starts to look a little bit more like that C shape. I'm trying to create that full spinal curve. From the base of the skull, whoop, all the way around to the tailbone. We can inhale to reset back to where we started and try it again. So nice neutral shoulders, earlobes over shoulder tops, squeezing the glutes to roll back through the pelvis. Make it look like a C shape. And now that's kind of hard to tell by yourself. It's something that I would be able to help you with in the class, being able to see you. What you don't want to do is just think, oh, rolling back halfway. Yeah, rolling back halfway. There's a lot of back work in that. We really don't want to do that to ourselves. We want to think about rectus abdominis, six-pack muscles. They're the ones curving. They're pulling your pubic bone up towards your breastbone. That's what we want for this. Let's try a couple more. So finding that C curve, that rounded shape. Make sure you don't project the head forward. Earlobes over shoulder tops. Curve, curve, curve. Pubic bone trying to curve up. Sometimes it feels like maximum effort for tiny, tiny little movement, but trust me, it's doing the job. Last one. Here we go. Squeezing the glutes, tilting the pelvis, rounding the spine. And up and over and release. That's a proper full ab workout. I love that one. It took me so long to really get to grips with that, so don't worry if it didn't really happen for you today, if you kind of didn't get what I was talking about. Remember, it's a process, yeah? The first few sessions you might just be trying to follow the choreography, getting around the idea of these different shapes and movements. But with progression and repetition, it starts to fall into place. Let's take a multiplanal exercise. We talked about multiplanal briefly in the warm-up. What do I mean by that? I mean, when we talked in video number 3 about the different planes of movement, and we talked about how we could be flexing, perhaps, we could be rotating, and this is actually an exercise that's going to use both of those actions, not those two specific things, but flexion and rotation. So we're going to leave the spine and pelvis in neutral to start with for this one. We're going to take the hands behind the head. We're going to do an exercise for our obliques, the muscles that wrap across the torso, and they help us to rotate. They also do a little bit of side bend as well, and they do several different jobs. They add to flexion, they do lots of things. They're very hard working, our obliques. Let's give them the chance to rotate now. So we're going to start by thinking of this as both an ab prep and a rotation of the upper spine, yeah? Not your whole spine, you don't want to roll everything across. You want to try and keep your pelvis in that neutral place that it was before. So you've probably seen or done something like this before, where you exhale to flex and rotate, you inhale to come back. Common little, I don't want to call them mistakes, but hindrances, let's call them hindrances, things that are making it actually not as good for you, are thinking of closing your elbow towards your knee, sort of like elbow across. That's actually making the job a little too easy. You've closed into the midline of the body. It's actually much easier to just roll yourself across with your elbows in. Keeping them nice and wide adds more challenge to the obliques to roll you across. Another one would be popping the rib cage open in between. Yeah, we want to avoid that, coming back into your neutral spine. When you get more familiar with this, you might be coming back into just your ab prep in between. Rotate, ab prep, exhale, inhale. This can also be taken with the legs in a tabletop. So remember your imprint. Remember floating one leg and the other up into that tabletop position. And I'm trying to keep my inside thighs squeezing together. I'm wrapping my glute muscles underneath. There's other things that we can add to this, such as the single leg stretch. I would come back to that in another time, in another class, yeah? At the end, once again, we would release the head, the shoulders, the feet, the imprint into neutral, and release the hands. So it's another one. There's lots of ways that we can modify the exercise, and it's something that I would design around you, make it tailor-made to you when you're in the class. Let's go for one more thing today. Let's go for a side lying position. So I'm going to take this over onto one side, and we're going to take our side leg lift series number 1. That might not mean anything to you just yet, don't worry about it. We have several little exercises that we do in this side lying position that target different muscles around the hips and the legs. So when we are in our side lying position, we want to be as close to our neutral spine as possible. So you don't want to feel like you're kind of sinking down like a little banana or having a little lay in bed. We're lengthening both legs away from us. Glutes and hamstrings helping us to maintain that parallel alignment through the leg. We've also got length on both sides of the body. So I find this little tiny mouse hole underneath my waist by thinking of stacking this top hip bone over the bottom one. So I get this nice vertical line rather than sinking down, yeah? Long through the spine. This underneath arm, this can be lengthened with the head resting onto the arm if that's comfortable, or you can make a little cushion instead. Try and avoid this one, yeah? This forces your spine into a side bend, yeah? You can see already that dip has come down there. So we instead want to keep nice and long. Top hand can be in front of the chest for a little bit of support. And one of our side leg lift series that we do, the first one, involves some flexion through the foot and the ankle. So we get a little bit of work down there as well. We're going to raise the leg just to hip height. We're going to flex the foot. We're going to squeeze our inside thighs on the way down. Oh, and your ankle's going to click like mine. So we're thinking on the way up that we're lengthening the leg away from us and we're lengthening it back down. Yeah, don't think of it like a lift. It's not really the aim. It's about the long line all the way through the body. Flex and come down again. Let's go for 3 more. So lengthening away. So you've got your outside thigh and hip muscles working to bring the leg up. You've got your inside thigh squeezing on the way down. And we've got the muscles in the calf and the ankle helping us to find that flexion, that plantar and dorsiflexion. Again, just fancy science words, meaning pointing your foot, flexing your foot. Last one, here we go. This might be the time where you realise that my counting is terrible. Let's try it on the other side. So we've talked about the side lying position. We've talked about our neutral spine as close as we can find it, little gap under the waist, legs stacked one on top of the other. We've got that hand in front of the chest. Try and find a nice wide shoulder position. It's common to start letting that shoulder roll forwards. Try and keep that nice and wide. Ears resting down. And also we want to think now about those muscles around the waist once again. So we've still got our TVA, that corset looking muscle, wrapping around the waist, stopping us from sinking into the floor. And we've got our obliques, the muscles that were just doing the rotation in that oblique targeting exercise. They're now preventing rotation, so they're stopping us from rolling the hips forwards and back as we move that leg. Let's go for 2 more. Little tiny lift, lengthen down. So big toe reaching away, heel reaching down. I'm amazed that my ankle hasn't clicked on this side. This is usually the clicky one. Let's make this one our last one. And we can bend the legs in, have a little rest for a second, bring yourself back up to a sitting position. Let's take one little spine stretch forward, one little shell stretch action. We're going to breathe in, turn it to the side again, we're going to breathe in, nice wide shoulders. We're going to exhale to gently drop the gaze, drop the chin and curl forward. So this is not quite a C curve, this one, because I haven't moved my pelvis. This wants to stay nice and stacked and vertical. But I'm allowing the rest of the spine to curve over the top of that. Make sure your head doesn't end up hanging. A little bit of work to hold the earlobes over the shoulder tops. And we're going to exhale to unroll once again, restacking through our spine. And so those are a few more of our exercises, different start positions again, little helpful hints that are going to help you on the way to getting into that class and getting the most out of it. Whether it's my class, whether it's somebody else's class, always feel free to have a conversation with your instructor. You know, I'm new to this, I'm not really sure. They will definitely put you at ease, they will definitely keep an eye on you, and you will be safe, protected, and you'll be able to progress nice and swiftly. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll see you've got one more to go, and that's going to be how to use small equipment. So some of these things that are stacked around me are going to come into play. And I will see you there. Thank you.